Okay, guys. Let's do... Ten times get piercing went terribly wrong. My piercing didn't get... Believe me, I got 10 piercings. It didn't go wrong of me.
Number 10, wheelchair for life. In Brazil, a 20-year-old girl was left in a wheelchair after suffering a bacterial infection from a nose piercing. Sadly, she'll never walk again. All because she wanted to get a small piece of metal stuck through her nose, just like pretty much every single one of her friends. Her name is Leanne Diaz, and she got her nose pierced in
See,
July
I
of
got
2018.
mine, it didn't.
After she did it, the piercing bled and got a little swollen, but she just thought that was normal. Then she saw a spot on her nose, a rather big one that made her nose look bright red, like Rudolph the reindeer. The spot was followed by a fever, which was then followed by an outstanding pain in both her legs. Things got worse still. The pain gradually shifted to a feeling of numbness throughout her entire body, to the point where she couldn't walk anymore. And throughout this whole ordeal, doctors were struggling to give a proper diagnosis. It wasn't until they discovered bacteria in her bloodstream, something called Staphylococcus
sweet
aureus,
girls,
that they were
okay?
able to figure out what was going on. Here's where things got really gross. She was given an MRI scan at the hospital, which showed she had 500 milliliters of pus compressing through her vertebrae.
Ooh.
She literally had
It
pus
don't
in her
happen to
spine,
me.
causing her to be paralyzed. She couldn't feel anything at this point from her chest down. She underwent emergency surgery, which she managed to stop the infection from spreading, but it couldn't save her legs. It saved her life, but now she's stuck in a wheelchair. What's really crazy is that the neurosurgeon who did the surgery, a guy named Oswaldo Riviero Marquez, told local news he had never seen that kind of an infection in his 15 years of practicing medicine. Number 9, the wrong nipple.
Yeah, I have piercings. It don't happen to me, so...
Spent over $22,000 throughout her life to enhance her chest. She went from a 32A at the age of 21 to a 32 triple D at the age of 33. But
Why?
it would be a nipple piercing that almost killed Nikki. Something super simple and super cheap, and supposedly safe. A few weeks after Nikki got her left nipple pierced, she accidentally ripped the bar out of it. The left side of her chest became so unbearable that she
That gotta
collapsed
be
at
hurt.
work and was rushed to the hospital. But it turned out there was a bunch of different factors at play here. Doctors told her that she had gotten streptococcal A from her husband, but what should have been a normal bacterial infection triggered sepsis. Because she had just accidentally ripped out her nipple piercing, the sepsis spread into her breast and ravaged the tissue there. The
It
sepsis
happens.
was so bad that it literally ate her flesh to the point where doctors had to remove her implant, leaving her with a 32 triple D on one side and nothing on the other. Number 8, ear growths. Jennifer from Philadelphia was 18 years old when she went through a procedure that most teens in America go through without having any trouble. She got her ears pierced, but after she got the piercings, her ears became infected and she was left with huge and terrifying ugly growths protruding from the sides of her head. These growths were so big and so heavy that they actually gave her headaches and caused her to suffer from vertigo, aka severe dizziness. Jennifer had 4 growths in total, 2 on each ear. When she went to the hospital, the doctors told her there was nothing they could do to help. So she had to seek help from a specialist, Dr. Sandra Lee. Sandra was able to diagnose Jennifer with extreme keloids. This is a type of scarring that happens with minor skin damage. Basically, the piercings on her ears scarred over, and those scars continue to grow out of control.
That one happens to
The only way to
me.
get rid of them was with surgery.
I
But
used to
the surgery
have the
was not
big...
simple. The doctor had to remove a huge amount of Jennifer's ear tissue and then
man board, but it don't happen to me in the bottom, but in the top of it, I get just a little circle bubble like.
This wasn't a cure for
I had to take it out and
Jennifer had to continue with a course of radiation
I had to
therapy.
get the ear surgery for it.
Coming back. The only good news is that at least she had the growth
And no, I'm not gonna get that again.
Number 7. A deadly DIY. A schoolgirl in Brazil died from an infection after a botched DIY eyebrow piercing. Her name was Isabella Eduarda de Souza, just 15 years old. She worked up the courage to give herself the eyebrow piercing, but seeing as she wasn't a professional and had never done it before, things went terribly wrong. The only reason she did it
You can't
herself
do it to
was because her parents
yourself.
had refused to allow her to get one professionally. She felt that the
Go
only
to
way
the
she could
tattoo
have
shop.
the eyebrow piercing she so desperately craved was by jamming a needle through her face all by herself. Well, the needle she pushed through her eyebrow gave her an infection. 3 days after the risky procedure, her eyebrows started to swell. But by the time she finally decided to seek medical
mine
attention
didn't
at the
do that.
hospital, it was too late. She was rushed into an emergency room where she suffered 4 heart attacks in a row. She was then transferred to a special hospital, put on a ventilator, and passed on just shortly after. It might be worth quickly mentioning that this is probably the worst piercing to try and do yourself. An eyebrow piercing done improperly can not only cause a deadly infection, but can cause nerve damage that will mess up your face for the rest of your life. Number 6. A
I don't do piercing by myself.
Caulfield almost bled to death because of a cheek piercing.
On my ears, I put earrings, yeah, but
Face first on the pavement and then choking on her own blood. Doctors had to carry out an emergency operation, with one of the medics comparing her injury to that of a gunshot wound. When the doctors finally saved her life, they informed her that the reason for her troubles was that the cheek piercing had ruptured an artery in her face. The ruptured artery was roughly 4 pints of blood.
I see some girls on YouTube have that. Why?
Has between 6 and 7 pints of blood.
There's guys like that.
This means she lost over half of her entire blood stock.
Does men attracted to women have cheek piercings? Probably not.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Number 5. Losing an ear. Bianca Hart, 18 years old, from England, got a stud put in the top of her right ear.
Yep.
It was a quick procedure that cost about $10
I used to do that
right before the start of university. Several days later, she began to experience excruciating pain right in the area where she'd gotten the piercing. Clearly, it had become infected. She went back to the piercing studio to have the stud replaced with a small silver bar, but that didn't fix the problem. 2 weeks later, she was rushed to the emergency room. The first thing doctors did was cut her ear open. They thought her ear was full of pressure from the infection, and she needed it to be released. But after they made the cut, they realized the infection had been wreaking devastation for the past 2 weeks. It had eaten most of the cartilage.
Yeah, guys, what you do, don't get piercings up here, because I used to get one for my graduation gift, and guess what? It made a big, ugly bubble in my ear, so
she's still stuck with just part of an ear for the rest of her life. But at least she finally got
that's why I counted I had 10 piercings now.
Bianca did so with a bandage wrapped around her head. So, that was probably pretty embarrassing. Number 4. Playground piercings. Parents are being warned of a deadly new craze on school playgrounds across the country in which teens are almost dying from giving themselves fake body piercings. The craze came from none other than TikTok, where teenagers learned that they can give themselves fake tongue piercings using magnetic ball bearings. But instead of getting the look they want, many of those youngsters are accidentally swallowing the ball piercings, causing bowel perforation and intestinal blockage. According to Sanja Bezarovic, a pediatric surgeon at Hull and East Yorkshire hospitals, 3 children nearly died in just a few weeks from attempting their very own tongue piercings. One of them was a 9-year-old boy, with another being just 12 years old. In the case of Freddie Webster, 12, he had to have 10 centimeters of his bowel removed in an emergency operation after he swallowed several magnetic ball bearings. These ball bearings ripped a hole right through his stomach. He had put the ball bearings in his cheek and then attached a metal object on the outside of his cheek, making it look like he had a piercing. But when he tried to remove the ball bearings in his mouth, 2 of them slipped down his throat. Within just 5 minutes, he began to experience stomach pain. pain became so severe that he was rushed to the hospital, where he was taken immediately into surgery. And while all three of these recent cases were lucky, with the kid surviving, doctors are warning parents that the next kid may not be so fortunate. Number 3. Nightmare at Claire's. A 6-year-old girl named Lily begged her mother to get her ears pierced. Her mother, Susie Nesbitt, had gotten her first piercing as a child. All Lily's friends
I
had
have ear
piercings.
piercings since I was
The mother took her daughter to the store Claire's.
when I was a baby, when I was born.
Lily was excited, and she would finally be able to wear jewelry in her ears, just like all her friends. But of course, that's not the end of the story. 3 weeks after the piercing, Lily's earrings refused to come out. Her mother had been cleaning her ear with special liquid and hadn't tried to take the earring out. But during those 3 weeks, the earring had embedded itself underneath the young girl's skin, something that's definitely not supposed to happen. Lily had to go to the hospital and be given local anesthetic so the doctors could cut the earring out of her scalpel. Ouch.
That kinda hurt. Ow. It didn't happen to me.
Tonight's dinner? It's gonna be great.
Not in this.
Totally fine
It's
again.
shut, so.
No longer interested in getting
It's not shut, it's just I haven't wear earrings a while.
carved out of your ear on an operating table would put anybody off the trend. Number 2, fulminant liver failure. A woman from Queens in New York City decided to treat herself for the holidays. She got herself a small diamond nose ring as a gift from herself to herself. Shortly after,
There's nothing
Dana
wrong with
Smith
that.
was rushed to the hospital, barely alive. According to what Dana told CBS New York, she lost her appetite in the week following the implant of a small diamond stud just over her left nostril. Shortly after, she began to experience stomach pain, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, she was too scared to go to the hospital. She waited until it felt like she was actually going to die before she took herself to the emergency room. And by that time, her liver had already began to fail. She was put into a medically induced coma and diagnosed with fulminant liver failure. When Dana woke up from her coma, she was informed that the infection from her simple diamond stud had gotten so bad that they had to give her a liver transplant while she was asleep. Dana had only thought she had a stomach flu. She had no idea when she went to the hospital that she was just days away from her liver failing and her dropping dead. And number 1, a bad birthday present. According to Amanda Taylor's family, she wanted
See,
a
I
tongue
always
piercing
wanna
so that
get
she could look like her favorite pop
tongue
star.
piercing.
It was also Amanda's birthday, and her family was happy to pay for the piercing as a special gift. But it turned out to be the worst birthday present ever because Amanda died from blood poisoning just 2 days later. Amanda was 34 years old when she collapsed, all because of a tiny steel bar shoved through her tongue. The day before, she wrote in a Facebook post that she felt like garbage. The day before that, she had visited Silverhand Jewelry in the city of Cardiff to have the stud put in. Then her tongue became swollen. She came down with a sore throat, and when she went to see the doctor, she was prescribed penicillin. The doctor thought she had tonsillitis, but when she got home, she died from septicemia and acute tonsillitis. Public health officials investigated the jewelry store she had gotten the piercing from, only to find that they had unhygienic practices. Go figure. Amanda Taylor died because the people that gave her the piercing were dirty, and the piercing got infected with bacteria.
You
But of
should
course,
clean
the
them,
jewelry store
not.
insists that they followed a very strict hygiene protocol. In the end, nobody was convicted, and Amanda Taylor was buried 6 feet under. Thanks for watching. What's the worst experience you've ever had with
My worst experience of like cold bar, like I said, and my belly pierced. That's it. So yeah, I will see you guys in my second video. So I see you then.